good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Whatever time you're listening to this in California, welcome. This is John and Jeff, and we're back with another pest guide. It's a bit cooler, Jeff. It's a bit cooler out there. We're having a little fluctuation in the weather there, but so we're going to jump in today and talk a little bit about the cooler weather and the type of pests that we can expect in the cooler weather, and also a lot what you guys maybe don't realize is the overwintering aspect of pests.
Yeah.
Now, and you know, California is well known for the varied type of climate that happens there, and so you've got to take this into consideration. So, Jeff, how are you doing, my friend?
Doing pretty good. Yeah, it's like the old saying goes, don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes, it'll change.
Do you know what? But you know, obviously back in the day in Scotland, you could go. I used to go hiking up the Cairngorms or Glencore or something like that, and you would get 4 seasons. And I wouldn't say it used to be you'd say you get 4 seasons in one day. You'd get 4 seasons in literally the hour. It would change that
wow.
fast.
Yep. And we've had that, lately. It's a cooling trend. It's getting cooler. Like today was fairly cool. But there've been a couple of warmer days in the mix, and it's kind of fluctuating back and forth. And of course, finally now in November, we're starting to see some of these leaves change color on the trees. They haven't all fallen off yet, but they're starting to get a little color on them. We're starting to look a little bit like what we were expecting, to look like at the beginning of October, but everything was still green then. And the bugs were still, out in force and doing what they do. Now they're seeking refuge. They're seeking shelter. Not just the bugs, of course, the rodents as well. They don't want to get cold at night. And so, that's
like anybody. I mean, if you're going to get cold and wet, you're going to want to get inside. And I think that's the one thing I want to kind of jump into right there is what we're talking about, Jeff, because people expect, and this is unfortunate, people expect, okay, it gets colder, therefore I don't see the ants as much. I don't see the spiders. I don't see, and I don't see the other bugs or anything else. We've got the problem with rodents. Obviously, rodents will come in a lot more when the weather's cooler as well. So we've got that. But we've got, there's cockroaches and everything else and various other types of insects and pests that we have. It doesn't mean that they're gone. People think that it's just cold and they've gone, but they haven't.
They haven't. They really haven't. And I've joked around with people about that. I said, well, look, wait a minute. Where do you think they went? Did you think that they all, got a Groupon, hopped a plane to Cabo where it's a little warmer? I said, I'm sure they love to because the climate down there is a little warmer right now while it's getting cooler here. And that's why people vacation there in the winter and whatnot. But, in all reality, no, they're, I've had a few people this week say, I've noticed a whole lot of these roaches starting to just show up in my garage and, can I have the garage sprayed? Of course you can have the garage sprayed. I'm also doing the outer perimeters, but it's been getting awful cold at night. So they're having that last hurrah, and they're really trying to get in that garage because it's a little bit warmer. But so many different bugs. They're starting to now change their patterns, change their habits, and of course overwinter. They're getting ready for that. And another one that always, I get a lot of surprise out of people, but just looking at the cold hard numbers. Right around the holidays is when we get a lot of calls for ants. And people say, I didn't think there were ants in the winter. And I'm like, oh, no, there's ants all year round.
All year round.
And so many times it's been the story of, well, I baked a pie and I set it out to cool and I came back and it's covered in ants. And I said, oh, they were there. They were just waiting for you to bake them a pie.
Or of course, let's talk about this. Or of course, you go out there, you get your Christmas tree. You've seen that film on Chevy Chase, where the squirrel is in the freaking Christmas tree,
Vacation,
right?
yes,
Christmas Vacation, brilliant, right?
Yeah.
But let's face it, that's actually true. I mean, you can get it. It's great to have a real Christmas tree and everything else, but it can also bring in bugs. And you're right. You're going to have ants. All right, in the summer, you're going to see them more because there's a lot more activity. There's a lot more of the reproduction of these pests, and you see them out there. But they do come in, and I love the fact that you bring up this overwintering, right? Because some people don't understand that. Let's tell our listeners what overwintering actually means.
So, a lot of these pests, when they overwinter, they're looking for a good place to shelter and hunker down through the cold weather and any storms that might be coming through during the cold season. They don't want to be cold and wet.
Mm-hmm.
If you're at a high enough elevation, I mean, here, in our local area, we've gotten snow,
Yeah.
a time or two. It doesn't stick for very long, but and the kids love it. They get out in the front yard, build a snowman. We don't have to drive up to the mountain, but just in the high desert areas, we've had snowfall,
And it makes
and
a change.
yeah,
It
it's
makes a difference with with pests and other wildlife as well.
oh, absolutely. And so they don't want to be caught out in it. They don't want to get cold, wet, drown, get frozen by snow. So they're getting into the soffits and they're getting it up in all the houses out here
Mm-hmm.
tend to have more of a stucco built, so they creep up into that weep seal or the weep screed that's around the base of the foundation. One of the main areas we hit when we do a service, because of that. But that leads right up into the wall voids. And,
Yeah.
of course, they're insulated from the elements at that point because they're inside that wall void. So they're not getting hit by the rain. They're not getting hit as bad by the
And
overnight freeze.
they're
They're
surviving
surviving.
through the worst of the winter and the worst of the temperatures. And then, Jeff,
Correct.
and this is what, ladies and gentlemen, you need to think about this. This is why it's important. Jeff and I talk about, and we were just talking about this. It's important that you realize that you've got to get ahead of the game. You've got to be
Yes.
proactive rather than reactive, because these overwintering pests that maybe you don't see them all. Because so you think, all right, I'll just stop pest control because I don't see any pests at the moment. But they're overwintering. They're in your home. You just don't see them. And
Right.
yes, if you leave residue of food and everything out, you're going to get ants. And of course, where we have other pests, we've got other spiders, because it's not that spiders are coming in because they want somewhere to keep cozy and warm and everything else. Well, there's an element of that. They don't necessarily they're there all year, but it's the abundance of pests and the abundance of food and everything that's there for them, their survivability. And any creature wants to come in out of the cold. But then spring
Absolutely.
happens, doesn't it, Jeff? And then it just
Yes.
boom.
And it's like an explosion, both in what we see out there. The flowers start blooming, right? Of course,
Mm.
everybody loves that. All the flowers start blooming. Spring is here. The sun's shining. It's bright, and the grass starts getting more green, and it's starting to look really nice out there. And but what we see is an explosion. We see a lot more activity on the ground. We see a lot more,
Mm.
of all these different creatures moving around, and our phones. That's when the phones light up. And what happens is it seems like it starts all at once, and it
Yeah.
kind of does. But
Yeah.
as far as the visual that the typical homeowner is going to see, they're going to go, "Wow, these guys weren't here, just a week ago. Where did all these come from?" And it's like, well, what they don't know is that they were there. They were there,
And
and so when people say,
they didn't keep their service up. They actually didn't keep
"That's right,"
proactively, having their
yeah.
treatments done,
I
even
had
through the winter.
somebody do that, once. They said, "Hey, we're gonna go ahead and hold off," and they held off through the winter. And spring rolled around, and they called and said, "How soon can you get here? Is there any chance you can be here today?" I said, "Well, no, no, but today's fairly booked. I'm going to be out all day,
Yeah.
but tomorrow we have an opening. Are
The
you okay waiting until
expectations are not there.
tomorrow?" But yeah, they said, "Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I guess we have to wait, but it's really bad." And you know, well, when I went and saw them the next day, I explained. I said, this is what I was hoping to avoid. I said, now had we done our service diligently through the winter and done the things that we do, we may have mitigated this, and it wouldn't have gotten so
No
out of
problem.
hand. Like you mentioned, being proactive as opposed to being reactive. But I think what happens is people don't
Yeah.
realize that it's not that they're gone; they're just regrouping. They're
Yeah.
getting ready for the next season, and the next season's gonna
And they
come,
want to
whether we.
survive, and they want to survive,
Yeah.
and they want to thrive, and of course that means multiplication and a
Yep.
little bit of change. And then here's the other thing, though, I noticed as well, because it happens. Jeff, we can have the cold spell that comes in, and you might get a
Yes.
bit of snow and everything else, but you know that the fluctuation of the weather is so changeable that we could have a warm spell that comes in, and all of a sudden, boom! During the winter, you've got a problem. Ants are
Yes,
flourishing, cockroaches are out. Obviously, the rodents are always going to be a problem, but a freak weather pattern that increases the temperature brings
absolutely.
it out, brings it all out of hibernation, brings the overwintering out, and you then have an explosive problem in your hands, which is
You know,
why
I
it's
was
important.
talking with a colleague of mine, that I worked with, years ago, and he's got about, I don't know, about half the time I've got into this, and he says, just when I thought I'd seen it all, I got bee calls in December, and I said,
I
oh, it
know, I know.
happens.
Yeah,
And I said, believe me, the first time I got a bee call in December, somebody called and said, I have a bee problem. And I said, well, it's about 38 degrees outside. It's December. Are you sure it's bees? He sent me a picture and I went, no, yeah, those are bees.
because the temperature's increased.
Yeah, and that's what happened, and it was cold out that morning, but by midday we were up in the high 50s, but the sun was shining, and if the sun's shining brightly and there's anything blossoming, of course that gives the bees something to go for, and so they start flying around, they start emerging. This particular case, there was he had the problem a bit longer than I think he realized he had the problem because
Yeah,
the wall was pretty, very full of bee hive material and bees, and it's one of the rare occasions where we break out some neat tech like a thermocam and aim it at the wall, and we can see all their heat. And then that's nice. Then I can show them visually, hey, this is where the bees are in your wall.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to let people know as well is that they might not see the pests in the homes, but
Hmm.
when they're in between the walls, when they're in the attics, when they're in the foundations, when they're still thriving in that area because there's still heat. Because if you're cold in the winter, you're going to put the heating on. You're going to have the air
Absolutely.
conditioning down. You're going to have the heating on, and you're
Yes,
creating a heated space for pets.
you
Not
are. You
pets,
really are.
pests,
You really
pests.
are. And it's amazing to me. I mean, whether you're cranking up the heater or if you just buy some firewood down at the store and you build a fire in the fireplace, you're doing
Yeah.
essentially either way
Yeah.
the same thing. You're heating your space. You're heating your living space. So that way you're not freezing when you're inside your home. You're comfortable. It might be really cold outside. And you take a step out and you go, oh boy, I'm going to need a jacket today. This is a little too nippy out there. Um, those bugs are, if they're in those areas, they're reaping the benefits because the heat's seeping into the
Yeah.
walls, the heat's seeping into the floors, and of course into the attic. Heat rises, so the attic
The hive's going to get
gets
warm.
warmed
So,
up.
so then, I mean, so we know that obviously we have a problem with ants and cockroaches and various and fleas as well. We can have fleas even during the winter because we heat them up and we have
Yes.
pets and everything else. But I want to kind
Yeah.
of jump in because people we have I mean, if you haven't seen, we did a little guide before on rodents and go and check that guide out about rodents. But in
Oh
overwintering, this
yes.
is a problem. And we're not just talking about rats and mice, we're talking about other rodents. You're talking about chipmunks, you're talking about bats and squirrels. I mean, and they get into your house. Like if
Yes.
it's cold outside, they want to get in. If they can get in. So it's also important that you realize that exclusion of wildlife, of pests, is important, especially when it comes to the winter. And
Yes.
so as part of your, you should be contacting us and say, hey, not it's getting cold, I think I'm going to stop. It should be it's getting cold. Can we do an inspection to see if there's any particular problematical areas where pests will get in, including wildlife? And
Absolutely.
then keeping on top of everything, including exclusion, to make sure that when you get into that
Yep.
warmer weather, you're ready and everything's done. Because there's nothing worse you want to deal with, ladies and gentlemen, during your holiday season is to be battling as we go back to Chevy Chase and the
Absolutely.
Christmas tree. It could be in your attic, your squirrels and everything else. So you have to be thinking
Yes.
about, yes, it's colder. Where around the property could I possibly have it? And get Jeff and get the guys to go and check it out for you and give you that report.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And it's just the other day. and went out to one, and yeah, that's what they asked. They said, hey, can we take a look around the property and see anything? And I was like, oh, absolutely. I said, not a problem. So we lined it up and we notched out some time. We did a thorough inspection. And I mean, it could be something as simple as the tree hangs over the roof here.
Yeah.
I can see, that might lead to something. And then popping up into the attic. Well, wouldn't you know it, they have, where the fans, one's in a bathroom and one's in a laundry area, and they have the flex tubing up in the attic, and it goes out through a rooftop port.
Oh, okay.
They didn't screen them when they put those ports in. And here's the thing: it also had top vents and gable vents on the sides. So the gable vents on the sides, over time, the screens had been cut to run satellite cables through, and of
It just
course,
lets pests in.
the top vents, the screening on them was just hammered. I don't know what happened there, but it was, of the three in that particular one, the two of them were completely gone. They were missing, and the other one was on there, but it was just kind of tacked on there, and it was all bent on the one side. And I said, okay, took some pictures, and I said, okay, these are all the key areas inside the attic, and then walked around the outside. They have on that particular house, I guess it was the style at the time it was built, where the water heater is behind a door and it's on the outside of the house instead of in the garage or other places you normally find them in some of the newer construction and even older construction. So where this door on the outside leads to the water heater, but they'd used a door that was kind of like more like of an interior door, not really suited for all the elements outdoors. And
that'll just get broken down, and then you get pests that get through that no problem, or
they
wildlife.
get through that no problem, and then of course the pipes go in through, and it's just drywall inside of there, so it's easy to bust through, and it's it's not even textured really. It's it's just drywall inside there, because it doesn't have to be. It's more of a utility closet. It's just a place that they hide the water heater,
And rodents will eat through anything. We mentioned this in our last guide. Rodents will eat through anything, guys. I mean, they'll eat anything. They've been known to chew through concrete, so they can go through your little door and walls, and if
absolutely,
and if there's a little hole in your roof, before you know it, it's not just rats and mice. You could be dealing with squirrels and chipmunks and all sorts.
Oh yeah, even a raccoon. We've seen that happen.
Oh God,
before.
I never even thought of that. Raccoons,
yeah, and we have them. And Bearstown, where they were located, they were really lucky that none of this worked against them. They didn't really have any activity. But I told them, I said, now's the time. Now is the time, because if we have to do work in an attic and it's August, chances are we can only get it done very early in the morning before it gets very hot outside, because it gets to a certain temperature in that attic, and you've got to get out of there for safety's sake. You can't spend a lot of time in there. You'll get a heat stroke. You don't want that. So
cooler weather, you can do it. You want to get out there when it's cool, and this is the time, guys, to get your exclusion service done. This is the time to get Jeff out to actually check on all your property, your roof, and everything else, and get all that's squared away.
It's the best time of year for it. It really is, because if I have to spend 2-3 hours in an attic right now, not a problem. It's maybe in the 60s outside. It's at most maybe 80-85 in the attic. I don't mind 80-85. You crack a little.
It's different when it's 130 or 100.
Right. When you're at 130 degrees, though, it's like being inside of a sauna.
Yeah.
And you can only do the sauna for so many minutes before you go take a break and drink. And even at the gym, they say, don't stay in the sauna for longer than you can handle.
No, exactly.
Most people say 30 minutes, maybe 40 at the most. Then you take a break.
Yeah, that makes a big. It makes a big difference actually to do it, and that's and it's a shame that people don't realize. And this is why we bring this guide that that when it gets cooler, this is when you can actually be more proactive. This is when you can actually look at protecting my home, because remember, it's an investment as well into protecting your home. You don't want any damage, because rodents create a lot of damage. Raccoons will obviously create a lot of damage. And think about your children, ladies and gentlemen, as well, because if you've got young kids or even pets, right? When it gets cooler, it don't mean that the pests have gone. It actually means that there's a greater threat of wildlife coming in and pests developing for the spring.
Yes. Absolutely. And that's what I try to tell everybody, that it's tough sometimes out there. You work against preconceptions. They've always,
Yeah,
you know, since they were children, probably grew up with the mindset that, well, it's winter, there are no bugs. But nobody stopped and asked, what do you mean there are no bugs? There's always
they
bugs.
don't just disappear.
They don't
They're
just
always there.
vaporize.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so, I've heard a lot of different things out there, and I have to always ask the question. I go, respectfully, why do you think so? Well, because I don't
Yeah,
see them. Just because
yeah,
you don't see them doesn't mean they're not there. But
exactly.
and one of the ones that really surprised me was, well, you killed them all. And I said, boy, I sure wish. I wish. But then at the same point in time, if I killed them all, I would knock the ecological balance. Thank you.
I got
I would knock the
change your
ecology
teeth
so
there.
out of balance. Yeah. Yeah, I'm tripping over my own tongue here, but I would knock the ecology so far off
Yeah,
balance, we'd have a bigger problem on our hands. So I said,
massive.
I don't mind controlling the pests, but if I really eliminated them all, we'd have a disaster because
Yeah,
everything has to have a balance. So
and that's a
and I
brilliant
tell
point,
people,
Jeff. That's a
yeah,
brilliant point. It's about control. That's why it's called pest control.
absolutely, pest control, not pest elimination. And I drive
And
that
when
point
and when
home
you
as often
think about
as
it,
I.
and people say, "Well, you're an exterminator to the point that we're not exterminating the species, we're just
Right,
exterminating the infestation that's come
right.
into your home." There's a
When there's an
big difference,
infestation
ladies
in
and
the
gentlemen.
home, yeah, that's when we're aiming for total,
Ex- extermination. Yeah,
eradication of the infestation just in that
that's
property.
the
So,
difference.
you get German roaches. Our goal is net zero for that property. If you get
And
fleas,
they are
zero for
buggers to
that
deal with.
property. Bed bugs, zero for that
Bed
property.
bugs.
Yeah. Now
You
that's
see, that's the
always
other
the goal.
thing. Bed bugs don't stop. That's the other thing, ladies and gentlemen. Bed bugs don't stop in the winter.
No, they don't. As a matter of fact, it's ironic. I've looked at it, and if there's anything I can say that's fairly consistent year round,
Bed bugs.
it's bed bugs. It does not matter what season. Bed bugs are a constant, and we know that it doesn't really fluctuate. If anything, gosh, I hate to say it, but in the last 10 years, I've just noticed it, trend upward. And that's with really good products
Mm,
at our disposal,
yeah.
technological advancement. And yet here we are still fighting the bed bugs, and it looks like an uphill battle because you're like, wow, we're getting more bed bug calls, not fewer. It's just that people are moving them around more. And
Well, there's a lot of transient movement, and that's the thing. And
yep,
and the other thing is that you get a big threat with that, especially in the colder weather, because there's a lot of holidays and there's a lot of movement in summer, but equally there's a lot as well in the winter and the cooler times because
yeah,
you have the holidays, Christmas and New Year, and people
oh
are
yeah,
traveling, and there's a lot of so it doesn't stop, and that's why it's continually changing. And of course, let's face it, it doesn't matter whether you're against global warming, you're scientific about it, or it's not a political thing. You just need to realize that if you go outside, our weather does change. We have had a lot of
yes,
hot. We've had a lot, right? It is a scientific fact that we're
yes,
heating up more. So things change, and
things do.
that's why it's always going to be the pests are always going to be a struggle, um, essentially, and that's why we need the pest control, and even in the colder weather. Jeff, what do you think, in especially in Lancaster and Palmdale and roundabout the areas that you're operating in the colder weather? What do you think is the more prevalent pest that keeps popping its head up, and the customers are like, I didn't think that was possible.
So, I'm glad you asked that. I can tell you, we see a lot of people, and when we do, go out, we try to, get an idea from those
Yeah.
folks. What are you seeing? Have you been seeing anything? The big one that I get a lot of in the winter is earwigs, especially if it's rained and it's right after a rain.
Wow.
We
Yeah. Of
know that
course.
they like damp, but they don't like
Yes.
it. They don't like being submerged. So what happens? It gets rainy. If it's just a light
They
drizzle,
come in.
they don't really do much. But if it's more than a light drizzle, yeah, they come in. They try to get away from it because they don't want to drown.
Yeah.
The other one that we get is the ants. very much a year round.
Yeah,
and
I mean
around the holidays.
that's a given. I
Yeah.
think in the whole of America, well, the whole of the globe,
Honestly, yeah.
answer there 24/7, guys. I mean, really,
Yeah. They
if
never
you're
take a
cutting
break.
down if you're cutting down your pest control because it's colder, the answer's still there. So you're gonna have to deal with it. So, for all that for winter lasts a few months, I mean, really,
Yeah.
it's not even worth you stopping and starting. But no, it's interesting you say the earwigs because a lot of people they don't that it's quite shocking. We think about the pests as the ants we're dealing with, the bees and the rodents and everything else, but those
Yeah.
earwigs can be a problem.
Yeah, those little crustaceans, and of course everybody and their cousin says, "Ah, pincher bugs, pincher bugs, pincher bugs," and I say, "Okay, pincher bugs," but
I
we
used to
call them
think that they were
earwigs.
called earwigs because they gone in your ear. I know that's a myth, but
Yeah,
it's true though. When I was
and
a
it's
kid, I was terrified of them because I thought they'd get in and eat my brain.
right, right. Well, especially if of course, people in our generation, we grew up when we were kids, we
Yeah,
watched
yeah,
The
yeah,
Wrath of Khan,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I
Oh
mean,
my god,
that traumatizes you when you're little.
it
You think,
does. Oh
oh,
god, I remember
oh
that.
man, is that something that a bug can really do? And then it made Khan go crazy. That
Yeah,
old Star
yeah,
Trek
yeah.
movie. I think it was the third one. And
Wow,
God, the
I
Star
remember
Trek
that.
movies were awesome. All those old movies were great, but yeah, you saw that and you thought, oh no, if I get an earwig, man, I'm gonna go crazy like Khan. So,
And that's and the
but
earwigs can be a problem. I mean, obviously, they're not as massively an issue with disease and things. I mean, every
right,
pest and everything will bring disease and stuff. But well, really, if you've got earwigs coming in, then you have a moisture issue.
there's a
And
moisture issue. Now there's
if you're
moisture
and that's
pooling,
the thing. That's what I want everybody to think about. If you're seeing earwigs, there
right?
are other pests in the area.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, anytime there's an abrupt change, as I've told people, and I try to get out in front of it because I say, okay, it's cool now and it's been consistently cool. If we get a couple of warm days in between, just out of nowhere,
Boom.
high pressure system moves through and we get a lot of sunshine, a lot of warmth, and it goes up, a good 10-15 degrees, which it can do, and does often. And then all of a sudden you start seeing some activity, and then what I try to tell them is we're putting down a treatment that's going to stay, that's going to keep on working for the duration it's designed for, and it's gonna kind of ride through all those fluctuations and stuff. So when those pests start to become active again, one of the things I like people to bear in mind is, okay, so you had some sightings. Where did you see them? Okay, well that's one of the perimeters that we're treating, and
Mm,
that's on a regular basis. So what you're telling me is you saw them go across here, but they went right through our product. That's perfect. That's what we want.
yeah.
Those ones that you saw, those two or three you saw, they've gone ahead and picked up a lethal dose of the product that we applied, and that's what it's designed for. It's designed to keep working like a time release medicine. That's what
Yes.
I equate it to when I talk to people, and they say, "Well, why doesn't
Knockdown.
it work fast?" And I go, "Well, that's kind of the trade-off, isn't it?" I said, "You want something that keeps on working consistently, or do you want a fast knockdown? We have fast knockdowns. We use them for
And the
certain
thing
things."
is the fast knockdowns don't. It's not longevity. The fast
Right.
knockdown just knocks it down, and then it dissipates, and then atmosphere can, rain can take it out. But the
Yep.
products, and this is why it's important, ladies and gentlemen, to continually keep that treatment going because it lasts and it's
It does.
continually working.
And the thing that I've noticed as well, and it's one of those things. You get into the forums or you talk shop with another technician out
Yeah,
there, but yeah, and I tell people this all the time. Somebody's got 5-6 years of uninterrupted service. They ride through all seasons without really much of any kind of incident. So it's almost like it stacks and it's cumulative, where it really,
it's
starts to
insurance.
make a difference.
It's
Yeah.
insurance. You're insuring your property and your safety as well with it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I always tell people, you're starting off now. We don't know the history of this property. We don't know, before you bought this place and moved in, did they do pest control or didn't they? Maybe they did, maybe they did not. Maybe they took care of it
Mm.
themselves with some over the counter product. Maybe, who knows what they were doing. But now, your first year, expect it to be a little rocky. There's going to be little spikes of activity. communication is key. Let us know if there's something going on. And if it needs some troubleshooting, we're on it. That's part of the deal. But just know that year 2, it's a little easier, smoother. Year 3, it's a little easier, smoother than that. And I mean, folks that I've got, that are on their 8th, 9th year, I can't believe it. I go there in the middle of July or August and I ask them, how's everything? They go, it's great. Haven't really seen anything. And I'm like,
that's
well,
what we want. That's exactly what we want.
That's what we want.
Instead of the fluctuations, like, oh, it's colder, let's go. We don't need it. It's no, you need to keep it going.
Yeah, keeping it going really reaps you some benefits. And then, I've always explained too, when you get out in front of it, let's say you start pest control right now in November. Then spring rolls around, you've already got a few visits under your belt. You're going to fare better than somebody.
Absolutely.
And then you're not going to be that guy who's calling going, I need somebody right now. I don't care who can get to me now. Spring rolls around,
or the wife is going nuts because there's ants coming in all over their kitchen, or the cockroaches are coming in, and that's all hell is broke loose. And then you have to deal with it, and then your expectations are totally out of kilter because you're expecting everything to get done tomorrow, today, right now, in this moment. When if you'd have dealt with it properly and just started in November or kept your pest control going through, then overwintering is going to see you right through into the spring, into the summer months, and you're not going to have the problem. You're not going to be panicking and having the phone calls. And also, it's easier to start because then you're not getting called out as an emergency and it costing you more.
That's the other thing. And I tell people that too. It's a good time because it doesn't cost you more. Schedules are
Absolutely.
a bit more flexible.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you call right in the middle of peak season, everybody's rate's going to be higher because they've got to get more people in just to cover the demand. And then, so many people think it's a seasonal thing, and I tell them it is. It's all 4.
It's all 4 exactly. It's all 4 season. And that's why you want it. That's exactly why you want to keep it going. So, Jeff, before we finish off, let's kind of tell everybody the importance of at least having their properties inspected for pests for the winter and also going into the spring.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like we discussed, they're going to really show up and in good numbers, especially if they've had a good chance to regroup all winter. So, getting out in front of it, being proactive, it's especially smart. And yeah, those places where, maybe, in the case of the one I looked at, and that's just one example, but I've seen it, many times where, they have breaches, they have openings, they have some sort of structural deficiency. It might have been there since the place was built. And, if your house was built 10, 15 years ago and you haven't had a problem, there may still be a deficiency that could later become an issue. And,
Absolutely.
You get a pro to look at it and say, hey, listen, a rat can get in here. Or, hey, it's a big enough opening, a squirrel can get in here. Or, anything else, is it big enough still yet that maybe a raccoon can get in here. But, hey, you haven't had a problem yet. Maybe the smart money says, hey, let's go ahead and address that, now. Whereas we've also dealt with it on the flip side where, hey, rats got into the attic and chewed through the PEX piping and flooded my house.
Or at Christmas when your nuts are out and in the middle of those nuts, ladies and gentlemen, that's not chocolate drops.
No, exactly. It's not a chocolate sprinkle. Yeah, you know what? That's it. A bowl of fruit, a bowl of, just mixed nuts. And, these guys are equipped with the ability to shuck the shell right off and eat the goodies inside the shell. So, yeah, you see a shelled thing and then you look at, hey, that's not a chocolate sprinkle. Yeah, I think somebody got it here. You see the gnaw marks on the outer shell of the walnut or whatever you go. I'll be dipped. And yeah, these guys, it's amazing. You watch them, they'll pick up a walnut and they'll just pull that shell right off and eat the goodies inside. Oh yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, they're pretty skilled at that.
So guys, it's the holiday season. It's a colder season, and this is where you really need to be proactive because you don't want your holidays to be kind of disrupted by pests. And overwintering pests are ready to explode in the spring. They're in your home. They're in places you can't probably see because they're overwintering. And you need to realize that, this is the time as well where wildlife is looking to get in the colder weather. And remember that during the colder weather, especially in California, you have a fluctuation in the temperature. It goes up a few degrees, pests come out. So start your pest control now. Start it now before the spring. Contact us. We've always got special deals and everything going on for you, especially during this season as well. And we can come out and inspect, and Jeff will come out and inspect the property, do an exclusion service as well. This is the time now, guys, to be proactive. Don't be reactive and then panicking because of everything's happening.
Getting out in front of it saves you so much hassle. And I always tell people, it just goes back to the old cliche saying, but an ounce of prevention, pound of cure. You can mitigate so much just by getting the right professional in. They get their eyes on it, they come up with a game plan, and just knowing this is that time of year that maybe these products are going to work better, and those products are better in the summer, and everything's got its place, everything's got its usefulness, and and we have so many different things available to us, even the fast knockdowns, which, let's face it, if you're dealing with stinging insects, you want a fast knockdown.
But if you're doing with something, if you've got something that's relentless like ants and everything else, you want long-lasting treatment.
Absolutely.
And roaches
those guys,
and
they
stuff.
never
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
and they
Jeff,
work 24/7.
So let's do this. Let's finish over this, because it's been a great conversation and we've got loads more to do. But here, guys, this is what we want to leave you. We're not going to start it early, get ahead of the game. But if you've had a story, if you've had an issue from your Christmas tree that you've brought in, we want to hear about it, right?
Yes.
We want to hear about it. We want to hear about your nightmares. We want to hear if you've had a squirrel in there, a chipmunk in there, a mouse come in. We want to hear if you've had other pests come in. Send us your story of what your Christmas pest has been about.
Absolutely, yeah. Everybody's got a holiday story, and I know there's a lot of good ones out there, and I know I've been part of a few of those where the pie covered in ants in it, and then of course the holidays are always chock full of interesting happenings, and of course it's a jovial time, so we usually get through it pretty good. But some of these stories, I'm sure I'm looking forward to it myself. That ought to be great.
let's get a story in, and who knows, if you get the funniest story, we'll figure out some kind of prize for it. So let's see. Jeff and I will get our heads together and we'll figure out some kind of holiday type, the funniest one that we get in. So we might get a few in, we might get none in, we might get absolutely loads in, but we will be reading every single one of them, or and then we'll pick one, and we'll figure out something. So that'll just be a little bit of holiday fun over the season.
Absolutely.
Jeff,
keep things interesting.
Absolutely. That's what I'm all about. It's been awesome having you on. This is Jeff and John from First Response Pest Control. You got my words in a slurred. It's just, I'm doing it now.
See, the weather cools down and we start tripping over our own tongues.
First Response Pest Control. Make sure you check us out, firstresponsepc.com. And if you've got any problems, then just reach out to Jeff, reach out to Ash. We'll get you squared away. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you on the next guide. God bless.